Hi, my name is Yusuf, and for my 152A video project, I'm doing the effects of Ramadan fasting on young athletes. Fasting is a willing to not have food or drink or both for a period of time. People can sometimes fast from specific macro foods or foods in general to gain performance in other aspects of their training. However, fasting in this sense is more religious. Ramadan is a month where a group of the healthy 1.8 billion Muslims around the world fast. In a sense, it's completely fasting from food, water, intimacy, cussing, and more, from sunup to sundown for 30 days. This is a month that is based off the lunar calendar. Out of the 1.8 billion Muslims that practice Ramadan around the world, a lot of them are athletes, and a lot of them are professional athletes that have to perform at an elite level during their season. The optimal time of day for training during Ramadan is a review study from the Journal of Fasting and Health. This article enlightens readers on when athletes should train to get the best results. The importance of time for training is critical because there are specific times in the day where the body can perform at an elite level because of optimal nutrition. When doing aerobic training sessions, since the body has most of its energy from food and water and is hydrated earlier in the day, it suggests that athletes could train in the morning during Ramadan to support their training load and use the rest of the day to recover due to the fact that they don't have much food in their body. Concerning the time of day for resistance training, recent studies confirm the temporal specificity of training for adults. In this regard, after scheduling 6 weeks of resistance training, it showed that subjects trained better and performed a lot better when they were training in the early hours to improve their muscle performance during Wingate tests and also just resistance trainings, such as squats and higher reps. However, the percentage of this improvement was higher in the morning just because of the fact that their body was nutritionally sound. But it did say for resistance training, it is better to do it towards earlier in the day and more towards the afternoon and early afternoon, due to the fact that since their body is nutritionally sound towards the morning, it's best to do it then. But also for recovery, they can get their food a lot sooner rather than performing or training earlier in the day, very early in the day, and then having a longer time before they actually get food back in their system. So that way resistance training is more towards the middle of the day rather than aerobic training is towards the beginning. It just depends on what kind of athlete you are, and you know what kind of training you need and whatnot. So it depends on what kind of person you are, an athlete, depending on what time of day you want to train. The next article is the injury rates of professional soccer players during Ramadan. This is a journal from the Journal of Sports Sciences. Because during the month of Ramadan, there is no food or water throughout the day, glycogen storage in the muscle is extremely depleted, making the muscle extremely exhausted when wanting to do moderate to vigorous exercise bouts. Because there are limited capacity of muscle storage glycogen, there's predominant during severe intensity exercises, there's a lot of fatigue that could happen. The increased perception of fatigue reported during Ramadan fasting was a combination of intense training with altered carbohydrate intake and hydration status and sleep disturbances because of the sleep schedule. So there was a lot of overreaching problems and overtraining problems that they found, that Muslim athletes did not just get injured because of the food, they got injured because of overtraining. So they are saying that you should compensate a little bit your training regimens when you are fasting. It showed that in this table right here, it shows the different types of injuries that happened. It shows that before Ramadan, people that were fasting did have a higher injury rate, but it's not saying because of Ramadan, it's just because of overuse of what's going on of the person. The next article explains the water-salt balance in male football players and during the holy month of Ramadan. This is from the Journal of Sports Sciences. Based on the data shown in the article, it pretty much explains that there is no change in fluid loss, weight gain, or osmolarity during the day for these athletes. The reason for this is that when fasting, the athlete, when breaking their fast, they drink more and more water, and they replenish everything that they lost throughout the day, completely leveling out the water fluid loss. So in this table, it shows that the body mass did not change too much. The hemoglobin did not change too much. The hematocrit and sodium levels did not change that much from the fasting before Ramadan, week 2 and week 4. Nothing really completely changed, as you can see, but because of this, and because there's no change, it kind of shows that whatever, when breaking their fast, a lot of these athletes are able to replenish everything that they have lost in their body. The effects of fed versus fasted state aerobic training during Ramadan in the body composition and metabolic parameters in physically active men. This is in International Journal of Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism. It estimated the mean daily energy intake before Ramadan was similar to the fed and fast. Daily energy intake during Ramadan did not change in both groups compared to before and after. However, the absolute daily energy intake was significantly higher in the fed than the fast during the period between the middle of Ramadan. Carbohydrate consumption during Ramadan did not change in either group or compared before or after. However, protein consumption in the fasted increased by 10.7% before Ramadan to mid-Ramadan, and fat consumption of fed increased by 7.7%. Expressed as a percentage of daily macronutrient, fat and carbohydrate intake did not change during the Ramadan in this group. However, protein consumption in fast was significantly higher during the period between the beginning of Ramadan towards the middle. The next article, Ramadan and Sport, Minimizing Effects upon the Observant Athlete. This is more showing the cognitive and circadian rhythms for the athletes. There are many ways people are able to try to be more effective during the month of Ramadan. Things to look at are actually sleep patterns as well, how to train and when to eat, and how much water should be ingested. This is best for changing the mood of some of these athletes and will help the athlete a lot during their performance. The daily sleep and wakening rhythm is frequently disturbed in Ramadan, particularly in the time of the year that there's a longer day of fast. A late supper and an early breakfast then can occupy a normal sleep pattern. One study of the healthy non-athletic of the Saudi Arabians found that during Ramadan, bedtime was delayed by 60 to 90 minutes, but the total duration of sleep was unchanged because of the changes observed in athlete of the non-fasting controls. This is an underlying change in the total environment during the month. In the second sample of university sports students, bedtime was delayed by 171 minutes. In their case, the time of awakening remained unchanged, but by the time there was daytime, they would also just nap all the time to catch up on their sleep, partially compensated for the loss and whatnot. The average sleep that was lost was about 126 minutes, which is a lot. The next article is the effect of Ramadan fasting and triangular exercise progressive on the vigilance, mood, and blood glucose on trained athletes. This table right here just shows the parameters of the blood glucose levels, body weight, subjective alertness, and general mood. This variation of body weight, as you can see before Ramadan fasting, the first week, second week, and after. So the body weight was 74 before Ramadan, 74 the first week, 74 the second week, and around 75 after Ramadan. So this kind of just shows that body weight does not really fluctuate too much. So training can be relatively steady. You don't have to compensate for any drastic weight gains and weight losses. Blood glucose levels, however, did change significantly before Ramadan. Resting, the blood glucose level was 84, and then during or after exercise, it was around 109. For the first week, you could see that the blood glucose levels dropped by around 10 of those arbitrary numbers right there, and then after exercise, it was around 80, nothing close to what it was before Ramadan. During the second week, the numbers are relatively similar. It just rose a little bit, but then as you can see after Ramadan, it becomes 78, and then at resting, and then around 97.3 after exercise. And this just shows that you could see that the body is trying to be at equilibrium again, right when it was during the before Ramadan. As you can see, the subjective alertness and general mood, the numbers relatively stay the same. There's not much of a change. However, this is dependent on each athlete, and it could change from athlete to athlete. The last article of this is a self-generating coping strategy among Muslim athletes during the month of Ramadan, and this is from the Journal of Sports Sciences and Medicine. Coping essentially involves an athlete's individual response to deal with stressful situations. This is from Lazarus and Folkman, 1984. Commonly used coping strategies include problem-focused coping, whereas the athlete tries to reduce the symptoms associated with stress or alleviate the stimulus causing their stress response. Emotional and physical coping mechanisms, in which athlete can try to regulate his or her emotions and manage stress. Contemporary transitional model of stress and coping forms are shown throughout this study. Some people don't really get affected by it, but others do, and that's what it means by it's dependent on each person. The study explored a self-generated coping strategies employed by Muslim athletes from Southeast Asia region during the Ramadan fasting month. 65 national elite Muslim athletes responded to an open-ended question just to show how they would respond. The study questionnaires required athletes to respond to the following questions: describe the coping strategies you do to employ to reduce the impact on fasting on training and competition, to maintain a clear understanding of strategies and allow flexibility to content with responses. So one athlete wrote, I train usually at night, which is contradicting to what the other study was saying. I try to schedule my heavy training during the late evening, nighttime training after breaking my fast. This athlete says he does that just because he's able to get the nutrients he needs right after his training sessions, which is more towards a contradicting statement than what we read before. Another athlete said, I continue eating in the evening after breakfast. After breaking my fast, I eat increased quantity of food before beginning my fast, but once I break it, I eat more and more, and I try to drink more and more water at night so I can be hydrated towards the next day for the long fasting ahead. There are more studies that show that how many other athletes use different coping mechanisms, such as making sure that their hydration levels are constant throughout the night, so they wake up in the middle of the night. Like some athletes wake up in the middle of the night to ingest more food and water so that they are alleviating more of their pain and symptoms that they're going to have the next day, so that they don't have to eat so much food or water when they're going for 4 in the morning for breakfast. Although there is not actual studies done experimentally on what was best way to cope with sport and fasting, there is an experience from all different athletes and how they might want to deal with the long days of Ramadan. There are ways such as changing their diet and what they need to eat, such as more carbs and fats in the beginning of the day and more protein as recovery towards the end of the day. There was also self-coping ways to train differently in different times of the day for each athlete depending on their sport. Thank you for watching this boring video. Pretty much what this is just saying how Ramadan is not really too effective and it does not harm the body in significant ways. The body does adapt and does come back after long days of fasting with no food or water. A majority of what the articles are just saying is that a lot of these articles are just showing that Ramadan is not able to really hurt the person or hurt the athlete. It just is explaining how a lot of these articles in general are just showing how Ramadan does not negatively affect the athlete in performance. There might be some injuries due to overreached and overtraining, but that's just because there's a depletion of glucose sometimes. You can also see that there's different self-coping mechanisms and how people might want to train, and that's more of a subjective matter. Water and salt balance is extremely critical, as you can see.